This video is brought to you by Alaska Fast Cash, with locations in Anchorage, Wasilla, and Fairbanks. For the best deals on electronics, tools, jewelry, guns, Blu-rays, and DVDs, check out Alaska Fast Cash. All right, Governor Walker, I want to thank you for sitting down with me and doing this interview.
Happy to do that.
Since the election's been over. First thing I want to talk about is the transition. You were elected 4 years ago, and when you were elected, it was pretty close, so it took a while.
It did. It was actually November 15th when it was finally called. So it was a bit later.
So when there's a lot of reporting now about Governor-elect Dunleavy's team has sent out an email to over 800 employees asking for resignations, and then a letter saying they want to stay on board with his administration. That's pretty common for the top, commissioners, deputy commissioners. You didn't go that far. You cast I'd say not as big of a net on those requests. Can you talk a little bit about that? And
well, for us, it was nonpartisan. I mean, because we're nonpartisan, it wasn't. Our net was much smaller, and we kept a whole lot of people that actually had submitted resignations. We kept a fair amount of the Parnell administration of folks that. Otherwise, someone has to do that work, and we didn't see them as partisan, so we just kept them. So.
What were the tough things when you were doing your transition? What was I guess challenges? What were some of the tough things you had to?
Well, our interviewing was very broad because we had all walks of life folks that were interviewing for positions. So it wasn't just a party decision. It was 730,000 Alaskans. We're equally qualified as far as from a partisan standpoint because we're independent. So that I think made it took more time to do that because we actually the interviews were I think were pretty extensive. So I don't know the process. I have no reason and no need to know what the process that they're using in the incoming administration. So everybody does it differently. We were pretty selective and pretty careful. And again, a lot of the people we just kept a lot of people because there's no reason not to.
So going back to June, when Begich got in last minute and it changed the dynamic of the race, it was a three-way race. Let's just say that weren't to happen. If it was just election would have gone differently. It was just you and Mike Dunleavy instead of a three-way race. How do you see that it would have gone differently?
Well, I think it would have gone differently, and here's why. It would have kept the issues focused on Alaskan issues. And so when Mark Begich came in, it brought in sort of national issues of contention between Republicans and Democrats, and sort of brought issues into the discussion that I think otherwise would not have been there. And I think it took away from the focus of the issues, the focus of the issues of the economy, the fiscal situation. Certainly, crime was very important. I think the gas line was very important. I think that some of those got lesser attention because of some of the national focus that typical on partisanship.
It seemed like what was really going on was you and Begich were kind of going for some of the same overlap group of supporters, and for a long time Mike didn't really have to say much, and even after the primary it was kind of you didn't get out of the race until I guess a few weeks before the election. Do you feel like more things would have been asked of Mike, more questions would have been
there's no question about it. If you have two people and somebody doesn't show up, that's a bigger deal. Right. If there's three, it kind of gives a third one that does not choose to show up and meet and talk to Alaskans. It's the process goes on, and so I think that was unfortunate. There is a fair amount of overlap in certain percentage between myself and Mark Begich's support. The difference is that, Alaska, the largest group of voters in Alaska are independents, nonpartisan, and they're split in such a way they're to the middle to the right. I would say a fair amount. We're a resource state. There's no question about that. We're a resource state. Always have been. We're founded on those principles. I'm very aggressively supportive of resource development, responsible resource development. So I think that would have made a difference as well, because there's no question what I've done on resource development on the gas line and other efforts, testifying to opening up of ANWR and the 1002, those kinds of things, but paying off the oil tax credits, the time I've spent in the on the different drill rigs up north. I mean, there's no question what my passion is on resource development. That would have been a different. I think that would have made a major difference.
You and Mike Dunleavy both came out opposed to ballot measure 1. Begich came out in favor of that when it was still a three-way race. Do you think that had? I mean, that got knocked down over 60%.
Right.
Do you think that had any impact on the outcome?
I think it had a big impact, and I think that his. I don't know his. I can't speak to what his strategy was, but when you've attached something that fails 2 to 1, that definitely had an impact on when your economy is what it is, and you're in a resource state, to sort of be on an anti-resource platform. I think that definitely had an impact.
So I want to talk a little bit about, you got out of the race at the AFN meeting a few weeks before the election. That was right after Lieutenant Governor Malott resigned. Did that have an impact on you getting out? Was that the reason you got out?
Well, it was certainly a couple that had an impact of it.
I guess a deciding factor.
At that point, I mean, it was clear that a three-way race wasn't in the cards. That was evident by every poll that was out there. All that would do was hand it to Governor-elect Dunleavy, and so it was having and I knew this from before. When I ran before as an independent and won, that if you have a Democrat on the ballot, they're going to get, if nobody knows who they are, they're going to get double-digit support, just because someone says, "Hey, I'm a Democrat," and they're a Democrat.
Well, I think
if you have someone that's well known as if Begich had gotten out, he still would have gotten a significant amount of support just because he's a Democrat. So the defining moment is when he made the decision to stay on the ballot. We can say all we want in the media. You can't reach all the Alaskans that are out there. So his decision to stay on the ballot.
That was back in September.
Back in June 1 in the the deadline by which he could have stepped away. September, yeah.
So let's just say this thing with Byron didn't happen, and he didn't resign. Do you think somebody still would have gotten out of the race, or would it have gone to a three-way?
I think we would have gotten out of someone would have gotten out of the race. Maybe it would have been the other way around. Maybe it would have been Begich would have gotten out at that point. But the fact that he was still on the ballot was going to be something really difficult to overcome. To have him and have anybody as a Democrat on that ballot was going to be a challenge. To have two Democrats on the same ballot. The Republican going to win. The second Democrat was Byron Malott as lieutenant governor. So that was the really defining moment was when the decision was made that he would stay on the ballot. At that point, it became more difficult.
If you could have gone back, would you have maybe run in the Democratic primary, or would you have kept it?
I don't think so. I don't think I would have run in the Democratic primary. I think that once they had a candidate that was there that was well known. That's their primary. That's their, I don't think that would have had a different outcome. I really don't.
Going back to your term as governor, you're coming to the end of your term. What would you say your accomplishments are as governor? And what would you say some of the things, maybe if you could have done something differently, what would you have done?
On accomplishments, I think that the start was just the team we put together. We brought folks together to the table, the cabinet table, that had never been in the same room before. From different walks of life. They were not pedigreed politicians in government positions. They were private sector folks, the people I went after, and spent a lot of time saying, I need you to apply, I need you to come on board, and they did. So just putting together, breaking that mold of partisanship was really the first accomplishment. Just getting elected the way we did was a unity ticket, and then following that into our administration was certainly number one. Number two, the Alaska National Guard. The scandals that were going on at that time, what we did, when we came in and General Hummel came in and set the standard of ethics at the top, and we brought on Judge Collins to do an investigation of that. So that was certainly significant in doing that. The next step was I think the significance was Medicaid expansion. Providing health care for 44,000 Alaskans. I think was a significance. That also reduced our budget by about $16 million because we were paying, we as a state got benefits from that. We were paying for medical procedures for prisoners that Medicaid expansion covered that. So our budget came down by about $16 million, and it brought $1 billion of revenue into Alaska from the federal government from Washington D.C. at a time we really needed that. So that was a significant step at that point to do that.
Are those, I know when they expanded it, it was covered for the first 3 years at 100%, and then I think it was going down to a lesser 90%. Has that changed at all?
And we had an out that if it dropped down below 95%, we could opt out if we wanted to, and that's certainly, interesting enough, we do cartwheels to get our highway funding on a 90-10 split.
Right.
And so I guess, highways are important, healthcare is as well. But it's the savings we received in the budget as a result of that helped as well.
I guess, looking back, do you have any, regrets or anything you would have done differently?
Sure. I think every governor has regrets. I think what I would have done differently is that if I'd known that they were not going to have the political courage to do what they needed to do on the fiscal plan, to have a structured draw on earnings from government, I would have taken that constitutional budget reserve, that $14 billion. I would have paid off PERS and TERS. I would have funded every deferred maintenance project in the state. I would have made sure that capital projects got built around the state that would help the economy and help the local communities. I would have made that. I would put that money out into Alaska and paid off our debts. And so now we still have the PERS and TERS obligation, which we could have paid off with that money. I would have paid it off. And if the hiding place for those without political courage was a savings account that could quietly just draw some more out, I would have taken that away.
Well, that money's down to a few billion, right? In that
1.6 billion.
So I guess, December 3rd is the changeover. Have you thought at all about what you're going to, different governors have done different, Parnell went back into law and other governors have done different things. Are you planning to go back into law? Are you planning to work on the gas?
I have received a number of offers. Most of them have to do with resource development in Alaska. People know my passion on resource development. So I've received some interesting offers that involve resource development and law and other things. So I'm going to take my time and not be in any big hurry to, jump right into something right away. I've always had my own companies. I've never worked for anybody else. I did after law school for a few years actually about 10 years before I started my own law firm. So I don't know. I will figure that out. But my main focus now is making sure that the transition is smooth. That those that are part of my administration that I can help in any way in the transition, I will do that. And the last one I'm going to worry about is what I'm going to do, because there's a lot of other folks out there. I want to be the last one off of the plane to make sure that everybody's has anything I can do to help them transition into whatever else they're going to do. That's my focus now.
What advice have you given, or would you give Governor-elect Dunleavy regarding the transition?
I met with him last week, and we had a good conversation. And I just said, you'll get a lot of input, you'll get a lot of advice, and make sure that it works for you. Make sure that it really, when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, it's really your decision on many of these things. So at least it should be. So I encouraged him to look at it from that standpoint. It was a very pleasant meeting. I also told him that I hope he's very successful. I hope that, because if he's successful, then Alaska's successful. And really, it's a matter of what's best for Alaska, and I still believe that.
So, going back, you were on Air Force One with President Obama. You went to China. You met President Xi. You did a lot of pretty kind of crazy things that most people would never dream of doing. Did you see that happening when you won in 2014? Did you foresee some of these things you'd be doing?
Oh, gee, absolutely not.
Especially in China, the picture with all the people at the table. And
yeah, I think the uniqueness I had is that my relationship with President Obama was very unique, because I think partly because I was a nonpartisan, and then it wasn't long after President Trump was in, I traveled to Hawaii on Air Force One, and when President Trump was in office, we were meeting over there, and I think I was able to sort of move through the transition in the White House pretty smoothly because of being a nonpartisan. It wasn't us and them, and so I think that helped. I really do.
Well, you mentioned Anwar before, and I think a lot of folks have opinions about Trump and his personality, but I think it's hard to argue that Alaska, with Anwar and the King Cobra and other things have been happening, it's been, I'd say, positive.
It has, and I certainly give a tremendous amount of credit to Senator Murkowski on that. She has championed both of those, and I was I was really honored to be one of the individuals to provide testimony to Congress on opening up of the 1002 of Anwar. So, I think Alaska has the last 4 years has we fared well in many respects. We have made a turn on the fiscal situation. We have closed 80% of the gap in that. We'll be transitioning over a balanced budget. So it'll be the first balanced budget in 2012.
I want to ask about that. You're unveiling the budget next Monday, right?
Well, every governor has a choice of, we're duty bound to provide a budget. And we came into office, we received a budget. And so it's one that we've worked on and one that I think I don't think there's any reason to be open and transparent about it. We're not trying to do it any way to make anybody uncomfortable. I don't think it'll make anyone uncomfortable, but they can do with it whatever they want to do. We certainly made some modifications to the budget we received when we came into office.
So I guess how do you think history will view your term as governor?
I don't know. I hope we have people recognize that that it's okay to not necessarily be a partisan in politics. It's interesting, Jeff, that we spend 12 years of education system to get students to work together, work in groups, don't discriminate, and there's a lot of collaborative things that go on in education and in sports and in the corporate boardroom. But when you get into politics, all of a sudden don't work together, and if you do work with somebody else of another party, you're going to get punished. So that seems to be the only carve-out I can come up with where you're punished for working together. So I hope that people recognize that this model, we couldn't have done what we have accomplished without the independent, nonpartisan administration. The votes we had last year in the legislature on 26, Senate Bill 26, the major bipartisan in the House.
Was they using permanent fund partly for government, partly for
the structured draw, so it protects the fund into longevity. That just wouldn't happen on a partisan vote. It just wouldn't. And so that was the real proof that it works. Is when you take it, probably the most difficult vote ever taken in Juneau, I'm quite sure it was, and making it such a way it was a bipartisan vote. I have to say I was a little surprised at we have a lot of great legislators, but boy, there was a lot of folks with no political courage. I was trying to turn wishbones into backbones, and the open discussion that they would have about re-election, saying, if I do this or that, I won't get re-elected.
Do you think that was about you and your plan, or do you think it was about the letter by your name?
I think it was about whether or not, however they vote, would be used by their opposition against them in a re-election. And the focus seemed to be for so many of them openly, I'm going to do what's going to get me reelected. And boy, that doesn't always match. Sometimes that matches up with what's good for Alaska. Sometimes it doesn't. And I was just really surprised to see the level of how many were, and some that were focused on that, quite honestly, in 2016 didn't get reelected. But they were so focused on getting reelected that they just focused too much on that, and they didn't get reelected. And so I think that I think the voters are hopefully eyes wide open to that.
So what would your I guess parting words to the people of Alaska be, and also the new administration?
It would be a huge thank you. I mean, what an incredible honor to be one of 10 people that have served in this position as a governor. What an incredible honor. I look back at my past, my humble beginnings, sweeping floors in a high school when I was in high school, or as in junior high, I should say, as a school janitor. I never would at that point, as I was pushing that broom around. You have a lot of time to think when you're pushing a broom, and I did a lot of thinking. I never ever thought about being governor. So I think that my message is thank you, Alaska, for giving me a chance to represent Alaska the way I felt Alaska should be represented, based on what's best for Alaska. I have no disdain for any party. I just don't need one, because at this point in my life, I don't need a party to tell me how to think. I've lived here all my life. I know what I think is good for Alaska. I'm not sure a national platform really does. So my message is get involved, stay involved, pay attention to what's happening in Juneau. It's the greatest state in the nation, no question about it. I hope and pray that this administration will continue some of the programs and processes that we had in place, which are unique to Alaska. That the Governor's Tribal Advisory Council, working with tribes differently, working collaboratively with tribes. Very much hope that continues. The Alaska Education Challenge is probably one of the greatest things that we have established. I hope that stays in place. And the Public Safety Action Plan, the 82-point plan of public safety, how to bring down crime, how to approach. I'm a big believer, Jeff, that in order to do something, it's not just one-off. You have to have a plan. You have to have a team. You have to execute the plan. And so that's what we're in the process of doing. So I hope things like that will be looked at and evaluated, and then put somebody else's name on it. That's no problem at all. They do whatever they want to do, but don't necessarily just completely start over.
I did a podcast with Don Young a few weeks ago, and he told me that you can get a lot done if you don't care who takes credit. So.
Well, and
so
I've said that in the past, but on the gas line is a good example. I mean, the gas line, we made incredible progress on the gas line. My goodness, the first time we've ever had this kind of, we actually have, binding agreements on the gas. We have, a partner agreement, joint development agreements with the largest companies in the world for this project. We have more momentum than we've ever had because we finally have things aligned correctly. We finally have producers selling gas into a project. We have the market buying the gas. We have the state involved with a piece of infrastructure like a road, a railroad, an airport. We have the state involved in infrastructure.
Are you, on the gas line, are you worried or hopeful, or what do you think about Governor-elect Dunleavy named former Governor Parnell, the transition chair, and he changed the GIA around, and you changed that. Do you have any thoughts about what's going to happen with the gas line?
I don't. I met with Governor Parnell the other day, had a very good meeting with him. My request to talk to him about, make sure that, he knew information I know that I have certainly said publicly, so there was no inside, secrets of any sort, but understanding how it came about that it was transitioned over to the state at the producer's request. The buy-in and the support from the White House, from President Trump on down, President Xi in China, President Moon in Korea, President Hiroshi, President of Tokyo Gas. The support, and this project has gone from a regional project to a statewide, to a national, to a world stage. It was on the world stage when we signed the agreements in China. So everybody knows about this project. It'll be part of a trade resolution. There's any question about that. Secretary Treasury Mnuchin was here about 2 months ago. He called me up and said, I'm coming back from Bali or some conference they were at, and I need to stop somewhere. Where in Alaska can I meet you? Talk about the gas line. We met in Fairbanks. He spent the night in Fairbanks.
Oh, really? I don't think I heard that.
So there's been a lot of national, international attention on the gas line, and that's because people are now aware of it. They're aware that of the sheer volume of gas we have. It's one of the largest conventional gas projects out there. It's not shale gas. You don't have to go drilling wells every year to keep the volume up.
Oh, it's there.
Yeah, it's there. You need to stop putting it all back in the ground and whatnot. So the producers, it's a win-win for them. So, I mean, the alignment is there. The momentum is there. I hope that continues on. We're probably within 3 months of getting the preliminary EIS from FERC. That's a major accomplishment. So I hope the momentum continues on.
Well, Governor, I want to thank you. I want to wish you all the best. I think you'll have some probably long nights of sleep ahead of you, huh?
I'm looking forward to some relaxation with the First Lady and come back to Alaska and get after it as I've always done.
Well, I want to happy Thanksgiving and happy holidays, and I want to just thank you. I get to know you back in 2010, and over time I've gotten to know you pretty well, and I want to thank you for doing it. We did an interview before, and you've been very accessible and open. So
sure.
I want to say I appreciate that, and wish you all the best. Like I said, happy Thanksgiving.
Same to you.
Big Turkey Day tomorrow. Huh?
It is. Thanks, Jeff. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Governor.
Yeah,
appreciate
thank you.
that. Thank you so much.